All right, well, welcome to the R&R Show. Sit back and relax. Enjoy the best little sports show ever. I'm your host, Michael Roope, and to the left of me is my co-host, William Rumsey. Hello, William.
Hooday.
All right, William. Well, obviously, we've got the big game tomorrow, so we thought we better get together to give our viewers a little insight about tomorrow's game. But before we do that, let's put a little nice tidy bow, as you would say, on last week's performance against Buffalo.
Yeah, you got me filled up on beef jerky and chocolate.
Yes.
I'm ready to go now. Yeah, man, that last week, I've said it all week, sitting through that Bills game, it felt like what I said, football nirvana. It was just, everything seemed to align. It was just pure joy watching the Bengals run roughshod over a team that pretty much, I mean, not everybody, but most people picked the Bills to win that game.
Yes, they did. They
except the R&R.
Exactly, except the R&R. I think most pundits basically made it a foregone conclusion it was going to be the Chiefs and Bills. And really, a lot of people thought the Bills were the odds-on favorite to be the AFC representative. And the Bengals were having none of that. I gave you a phrase, I believe, earlier in the week that, watching that game, I basically stated that the Bengals were basically walking the Bills up and down the field like dogs. I mean, to be honest with you, what was the final score last week?
27-10.
And I think if they really, really wanted to, they could have put a 40 burger up on the Bills if they wanted to or needed to.
Yeah, I think the term that I heard all week was boat raced. Like you said, up and down the field. I think you're right. I think that they could have scored more at the end, but they were like, let's just put it in our defense's hand. Josh Allen, that offense could do nothing against what Louis A. put in another stellar game plan, and it was impressive.
What was really cool that gave me cold chills at the beginning, watching it with some family and friends here at the house, was basically right out of the gate when the Bengals running game was getting 7-8 yards a pop. I looked over at my son. I go, this is going to be a cakewalk. If we're going to do that on the running game, and then when they started passing, it was like there wasn't a defender within 5 yards of some of these guys. I was like, what is going on? It gave me the feeling like Buffalo was just going through the motions. It was eerie.
It was odd.
Yeah.
It was very odd. And before Louis A., we're talking about the game plan, he's not been interviewed for one head coaching job. And that's insane to me.
Well, that makes me happy.
Yeah, for sure.
Just as a selfish person, I don't know what these GMs are studying, but if anybody would study Louis A. and know that the second coming out of halftimes, he makes the best halftime adjustments that I've ever seen a defensive coordinator make. He's just shutting down these premier offenses and making it look easy. And we're not talking like just an absolute like juggernaut defense. He's just schematically wearing these opponents out.
I mean, one thing that taken to that game was Mike Hilton. So, Mike Hilton, free agent signing a couple years ago, played for the Steelers. I really don't remember a lot of him when he played for the Steelers, but I heard all week this week, Mike Hilton's the Bengals' best defensive player.
Yeah.
Louis A. putting that guy in position to make plays, and I don't know that Mike Hilton's the best defensive player, but
he's good. He's good against the slot. I tell you that. He is unbelievable.
Louis A. is pushing all the right buttons. Got to hope that continues this week, and we think it will.
Just think about what he's doing with cornerback Eli Apple.
Yeah.
You put Eli Apple on some of these other teams, and he wouldn't even be in the league.
No.
But Louis A.'s putting Eli in positions to actually make him pretty damn serviceable.
Yeah.
I mean, it's amazing to watch. I
think I called that before this year. You were like, I don't know about that sign. I was like, man, I thought he played well last year. I mean, he got burnt in the Super Bowl by Cooper Kupp, but it's like, come on.
It was still fresh in the memory.
Yeah. I mean, who didn't Cooper Kupp?
No, he will bite on the double moves, but all DBs bite on double moves here or there. So it's it just we amplify because Eli chirps a lot.
Yeah.
So when he does give up a big play on the double move, it just gets amplified. So, but I can't complain. To your point, when Awuzie went down, I thought we were going to be in some trouble. Yeah. But I got to be honest with you. He is just coaching these boys up. Cam Taylor-Britt has just been
a revelation.
Been outstanding. And finally, our number one pick made some plays last week too, which was good to see because he had a rough two penalties in a row the week before against Baltimore. So I'm just saying on every level, it's amazing to watch them work as a unit, and it's not any like just ungodly superstar. They just are all good, well-rounded players that understand what Louis A is trying to do in his scheme.
It almost seems like the Bengals have a direction and they just keep building on it with the draft picks, the free agent signings, and they're just coming up roses with all those guys they've signed and picked. And
to your point, how you said, like, they have a direction. And, I've heard this several times is they are, the coaches in their front office are all on the same page. It's like they understand what guys fit their schemes, where their afterthoughts, they might have been high draft picks for other teams, but they just never felt that fit their schemes, and then they get them on the cheap. And really they plug them in well because they're athletically gifted, obviously, because they're high round picks, but they were never in the right scheme.
You know what that reminds me of? I remember back, this might have been 15 years ago or something. I remember, and this is random as hell, the Bengals, they had like the 17th or 18th pick in the draft, and they were talking about picking. I remember the guy. You remember a guy named Manny Lawson?
Yeah.
Well, they didn't end up getting him, but the like people in the media talked to people. If they would have picked him, they were going to change their whole defense from like a 3-4 to a 4-3. I'm like, what?
Yeah. You got to have an idea of what you're wanting to do and draft the players to fit your scheme.
Yeah.
Not change everything.
For one draft pick, I just thought that was like so Bengals. Like to what we have now is wild. And I don't know. Last week too, just, and then what Burrow did. I mean, to come at that first drive looked exactly like the first drive they had in the Monday Night Football game. And then to tack on again with another drive, I mean, I was just like, this... And I think Romo knew very early that the Bengals were going to win that.
I know he did, because the way they were gashing him on the run, and then when they were passing, literally their DBs were 5 yards away from all of our receivers. And then when you watched Buffalo finally kind of get a drive together, and they had to like scrape and scratch for every yard, and then they converted on fourth down. And my son, he got a little, he's like, oh my God, here we go. I'm like, buddy, no, here we go. We were boat racing them when we were on offense, and they really had to claw for every single yard they got.
They did.
And I knew it was
Singletary and Cook. They couldn't. But your son, like I remember when Chase, they overturned that call, that touchdown. My Bengals old fandom came out and I was like, that is going to come back to bite us in the ass.
I was nervous because I'll just say this. When right before half, I was nervous. I was like, oh my God, do not let the Bills score a touchdown here, because they get the ball first in the second half, and then here we go. It'll be knotted up. But none of that came to fruition, and it just was a complete and utter domination. Like I said, they could have put a 40-burger on those Bills, and there was nothing that they could do about it.
And I'll put a bow on this game. It's just that fumble. Then there were a couple other calls that completely went against the Bengals. So if it was a close game, but it just wasn't close, the Bengals didn't allow it to become close.
No. And here's what the Bengals are doing defensively. They are frustrating their opponents, and it's starting to show on the sidelines, week in and week out. And last week against the Bills was a perfect example. Diggs was frustrated. Allen was like a deer in hell. Like, you saw panic and frustration because they could not solve Louis A's defense.
They could not.
No. And boy, it's fun to watch. And then when you're frustrated like that, and then you have a high-powered offense that we have in the Bengals, and then it's
football nirvana.
Oh, it's a thing of beauty. It just was so exciting. I love when we boat race people, and I'm excited about this week's matchup.
Well, it had been a while since we'd had a game where they just floored somebody. I mean, typically we're on the edge of our seat, like it's coming down in the last second, especially in the playoffs, and just you know
what it reminded me? It reminded me of the 88-89 Bengals when they had the invention of the no huddle. And people couldn't figure them out, and they were boat racing people during that Boomers MVP season, and that it gave me just cold chills watching that. I mean, it was exciting, and I will just put one last little bow on Buffalo. I know you saw that GM, with sour milk, crying sour milk, trying to throw some shade on the Bengals. Well, hey, we don't want to suck bad enough to ever have a high enough pick to get Chase. I do remember that they picked somebody named Sammy Watkins a slot ahead of where Chase went. So, quite frankly, that guy's a jabroni. He doesn't, he knew his window was this year because of those cap hits. Because I believe Allen goes from like 17 to 40 million, something crazy like that, and then Diggs goes way up there. So that they're going to lose a lot of players so Bengal Nation. The Bills will still be in the playoffs, but they will not be a contender going forward.
Man,
Mark my words. They're done. They are done.
Well, it's funny, too, to tack onto that. Like, this week, I heard somebody say, we thought before the year that Allen and Mahomes would be the new Brady Manning. Now, everybody's saying Burrow and Mahomes are the new Brady.
Did you already forget our opponent?
I did.
Okay.
But I think Burrow is going to be better than Manning.
Well, I think Burrow in this case would be the Brady of the bunch.
Brady.
Yeah,
okay.
Yeah, because Mahomes was putting up the numbers.
Okay.
And Burrow is more about winning.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
Now, not that Burrow can't put up numbers, because Brady, he's literally like Brady, because of the 07 when Brady went for 50. Burrow has all that, but I think he mentally, he cares about winning. He understands how he has to manage the game plan.
I basically said it because I don't know that Burrow will achieve Brady heights. So I said I think he can be better than Manning. I think that's more achievable.
Yeah.
I mean, just Brady's career is just
I think to be honest with you, I think a fair assessment is I really, before all said and done, I think Burrow can win 3 titles.
Yeah.
So 3 titles, he's already lost one, so that would mean he would at least have went to 4 Super Bowls. You go to 4 Super Bowls, you're not many have done that. Like there's probably on my
Montana,
hand.
Bradshaw.
Yeah, Montana, Bradshaw, Brady. That's about it because even Aikman's only went to 3.
Manning played.
Jim
3.
Kelly went to 4.
That's right.
Jim Kelly, but there is. I mean, we're talking just a handful of people here. So, I think Burrow's definitely on that trajectory. He says all the right things. He's got that edge to him. Mm-hmm. He's got that Brady-esque edge where he's just like, he's confident. He toes that line of being cocky, but he's just right there, and people love playing for him. Yeah. I bet you go to that Bengals locker room, they would all run through a brick wall for the guy.
Well, that's why I was having that conversation today about, even the defensive guys on the Bengals just love Burrow. They have his back, full stop, and it's impressive to watch.
And I saw on some of those national pundits, and did we ever think we would ever see the day they're saying Cincinnati is a destination?
Yeah.
Now, where free agents want to come. And boy, as a kid growing up, those 90 years in the 90s, you would never, ever in a zillion years think that Cincinnati would be a destination people want to go, but that's the Joe Burrow fact.
I remember when we had to pin our hopes on Antonio Bryant, that signing.
Yeah.
I don't think he played it down for us.
No, he didn't. I mean, but that just goes, because Cincinnati was notoriously known as a cheap, frugal organization.
Yeah.
But, you get a culture change in here, and that's what happens. Let that be a lesson to you Carson Palmer truthers.
Oh, man.
And it just takes the right guy to lead. Carson wasn't, a Joe Burrow as far as a leader. No. So, but that being said, let's talk about this week's game against the such a country favorite, the Kansas City Chiefs. The betting line is wildly went back and forth.
Yeah. What's it at now?
The last I checked, it was the Chiefs -1. Yeah. It started out Chiefs -2.5, and then it swung all the way down up over to the Bengals -2.5.
Yeah.
And that was all predicated on Mahomes' ankle. But now we've settled in at the Chiefs -1.
So I have a question about that. So the line, obviously it started off 2.5.
Correct.
Point favorite. Did the lines move because of what kind of money's coming in on it?
Absolutely.
That's what it is.
And just for you,
so it's not like people think like, well, the Chiefs are just going to win. It's just like it shifts because of what kind of money's coming in.
They instantly set a line, and then the action goes off of that. So once they set that line, and it takes a massive, for all you non-bettors, it takes a massive amount of money for it to move a half a point to a point. So for it to swing up to 5 points, I'm talking there is some major money being thrown at the Bengals or the Chiefs for it to flow like that back and forth.
That's what I figured.
Yeah,
okay.
so now it's settled in back down to -1. So basically a pick 'em, and I think that's a fair assessment because of the home field advantage with Kansas City.
So elephant in the room, the high ankle sprain. I don't know if it was misdiagnosed or what's going on with it because we've got the Zapruder film of pictures of Mahomes practicing, moving around pretty well. But if it is a high ankle sprain, there's just I don't think it's humanly possible that he's not going to feel that in this game tomorrow.
Absolutely. I think there's some gamesmanship going on because the clips that I've seen is basically him getting off a podium from a press conference and then him standing and milling around at a practice. He wasn't exerting any kind of effort, not having to push off.
People were analyzing what kind of socks he had on at that press conference.
Listen,
wild.
Yeah, well, I'll just tell you right now, the ankle that was in question and injured is his plant foot.
Yeah.
That's an issue.
That's an issue.
Now, for someone like Mahomes, it's maybe not as much of an issue because he's unorthodox. He throws off of crazy angles and that. So he's not like your typical quarterback. But I will tell you this. A lot of what Mahomes does is he does backyard football. He does a lot of improvising. And to improvise, that's when the plays are breaking down. Yep. He's the master of extending plays and then throwing at weird angles and stuff of that nature. That's going to be highly tested. I don't think he's 100%, and I think Andy Reid knows he's not at 100%. So I suspect that they are going to try to lean on that running game a lot more than usual.
Which from 1 week into the last 5 years, what they've done on Mahomes, that changes in just 1 week game plan. That has to affect the efficiency of their plays.
Yeah, absolutely. And, we've talked about this off air as what they do is Mahomes' main guy and safety blanket is who? Travis Kelce. Mm-hmm. The Bengals have devised that game plan defensively. Louis's done a masterful job. If what they've done a lot is take their defensive ends and have dropped them back to bracket Kelce, and that makes Mahomes come off of that first read.
Yep.
When he has to come off that first read, then he's going to have to improvise, and then it gets more to that backyard football. So, and that's going to put pressure on that ankle. Mm-hmm. I suspect Louis is going to devise early some pressure. Let's just see how good his ankle is. Yeah. And if it isn't good, Mahomes could be in for a long day.
Oh, boy. Yeah, I think that they'll put on the tape of the last game where Kelce didn't have one catch in the first half, ended up with 4 catches for 56 yards. But the game plan is just going to have to be different. So whether that changes his routes because Mahomes can't leave the pocket and scramble, I don't know. That'll be an interesting chess match to watch. And I think we've proven, the Bengals being 3-0 the last 3 meetings, they're in their head. And they know what to do. Yeah,
they've definitely are in Patrick Mahomes' head. He's been flustered. But I will say this. Obviously, Andy Reid is probably top 1 or 2 play callers in all of the league. Yeah. So, this will be a good chess match between the two. I think I've talked to you off air about Kadarius Toney. I believe that he will be the X factor. I think that they have really limited what he's done with KC for a game like this because they know what they have in him. And he's basically like a Tyreek Hill 2.0. He is very quick and shifty and short space. So that'll be interesting. That I think that KC will want to feature Kadarius Toney.
Yeah, he's got some skills. Does he have much on the deep ball, or you think he's catching those short runners?
I think he's more in the short because he doesn't have the top end speed like Tyreek, but he is probably quicker, more shiftier in the short space, which is still saying something.
Yeah.
Because we know how well Tyreek is.
Yeah, they've got some studs. I mean, like you said, Kelsey, Tony, and then I think Pacheco has been picking it up.
Yep.
And then McKinnon's tough in the passing. So they have weapons. But it just, I think it all comes back to that ankle.
Yeah. And they do have a
And
good
they have
line.
Tooney back. They didn't have him. Their all-pro guard. They didn't have him last game. So their offensive, like you said, their offensive line is really good. So
now I knew the last game, I believe Hubbard did work that other tackle, not Brown. Orlando Brown was mostly against Hendrickson, but Hubbard had some big plays against their other tackle. So that's something to watch out for as well. But I will say this, Louis A's been devising a lot of pressure schemes that these quarterbacks aren't picking up. And now, I'm not sure why they're not picking up, but Josh Allen looked like he wasn't reading the defense at all. No.
Yeah.
So, hopefully there's more of that to come with Mahomes. Now, on the other side of the ball, with our offense, how do we feel about the about tomorrow's game? Is number one guy for KC? Would you say would be Chris Jones?
Chris Jones. Yeah. I mean, that's the guy that's going to put pressure up the middle. He's going to be matched up against Sharping, who's kind of struggled a little bit. He had a good game last week, but he's struggled in place of Kappa.
But they didn't have no Chris Jones, I'll tell you that.
No, they did not. So that's the biggest worry. And then I say Frank Clark, because what they say is Chris Jones gets that pressure, frees Frank Clark up a little bit. So they're going to put more pressure on Burrow than last week. But I think from last year to this year, Burrow is way better at handling that pressure.
Oh, yeah. By far, and to be honest with you, and I think he's more confident in his running. I think he's another year removed from the knee injury. So if you've noticed, I feel like Burrow's been taking off a lot more, which I like, because that's what kind of excited me when we drafted him.
Yes and no. Yes and no. He gets out on the outside. I'm like, oh, yeah.
I get it, but that's just another thing for the defense to worry about. And I like that Burrow has it. I'd much rather have him passing, slinging the pigskin to his playmakers, but I like that he has the ability, and he did that, if you remember, the last championship, AFC Championship, he had a couple really big scrambles.
Yeah.
So I just like that he has that ability. I will say this, the Bengals did in the regular season, they ran the ball pretty well against the Chiefs, and now coming off a monster performance last week against the Bills, and plus adding Mixon to the fold, which we didn't have in the regular season. How do you see that shaping up?
Yeah, P. Ryan had, I think, 95 yards rushing in the first matchup, so now they get the doublehead monster. Mixon ran like a wild man last week. I think that's the key to the game. Can the Bengals get to second and short, which opens up the whole game plan? And Mixon, I think, he's ready for it, and I think he is.
You can tell he's hungry.
Yeah.
He's very hungry, and I know, I didn't know if you caught this on the national media there after the game. They interviewed, it was like, we're going to interview one of the players of the game, Joe Mixon, and I think Joe was under the understanding we were going to talk some accolades for him, and it became more about Burrow and Mahomes during the whole questionnaire, and I think it rubbed him wrong, and he made a little snarky comment. It's like, well, I know that all of the national media wants to talk about Burrow and Mahomes, but we are a quality, good overall team. So I think it rubbed him wrong, but I think that's just going to drive him more, make it hungrier.
We want to piss off.
Yeah, well, so. And when you say bulletin board material, does some of that stuff rub you wrong? I will say, as a runner, you can run a little bit more angrier.
For sure.
Sometimes it's a little easier to go down, but if you have a little bit more purpose, that is where some of that stuff comes into play.
And I'll be interested to see, because P. Ryan is a better pass blocker than Mixon. So, those passing downs, I'll just be interested to see how that shakes out. But I hope they do what they did to Buffalo, just run over 7 yards, 6-7 yards a pop.
Well, if they do that, then boy, are we in for a treat. But
what do we expect out of Jamar Chase?
I would not be shocked at all to see Chase go off for $150 with 2 tutties. They have nobody in his class in the secondary, and you know what?
Burrow said they've got 2 good corners out there.
They're going to get boat raced. I'm wanting to see somebody take the next step as far as solidifying as obviously
Second option.
T. Higgins, in theory, he's a number one on most teams, but he hasn't been playing like the T. Higgins that I think we all expect and know.
No.
I feel like almost Hayden Hurst has taken over that number two option with T being third, and then even Boyd being a very distant fourth.
Yeah.
And hell, maybe even P. Ryan Mixon before Boyd.
Yeah.
So it's a little. I would like to see.
T's performance has been perplexing. Now, he went on a deep route last week where he got a pass interference call and they got to the 3-yard line. So that's just as good as a catch.
Yeah, absolutely.
So,
and I think he deserves more of those. I know during the telecast they were saying that T says any quote unquote 50-50 ball is 80-20 in T's eyes.
I like that.
And I do like that. And I think he's accurate because he has so much length to him. And I think that'll be something that
Is it just the way the defense is playing the Bengals that, it's really just Jamar Chase and Hayden Hurst or,
every game plan is going to be different.
Yeah.
A lot of them, if you notice from last year to this year, Baltimore, hell, they just didn't want to get beat deep. Mm-hmm. They got tired of the man coverage, bringing pressure, and Burrow shredding them. So you could tell that they weren't going to get beat and they were wanting more, you're going to have to do long, sustained drives.
Yeah.
So it just all depends. Spagnuolo, he's notorious for wanting to bring pressure.
Good
but
luck.
I will tell you this. I don't think he will do it, this week against Joey B.
No, I don't either.
Yeah. So, now, real quick, as far as slowing down Chris Jones, and I was dead wrong. I don't ever care to admit when I'm wrong. I was worried last week saying, well, we need more P. Ryan for the blocking, but hell, the blocking was so good that allowed Mixon to get more run on the running plays. Do you suspect that we'll see more P. Ryan to help with Chris Jones? Because the quickest point to the quarterback is right up the middle, and he's going to be going against probably our weakest link in Sharping.
I don't know. It just depends. I don't see them chip a lot. I don't see them use P. Ryan up the middle on a lot of stuff. Do you?
But we don't go against a lot
That's
of guys
true.
the caliber of Chris Jones.
I think they'll just feel it out. See how it's going, and then if they need to bring somebody in.
I would be shocked if we didn't. Just have somebody helping out because I still if our tackles play like they did last week, we just got to make sure we focus on Chris Jones.
Yeah.
We stop Chris Jones, guess what?
We're going to the Super Bowl. Oh man.
Yeah, I don't see any way around it.
Yeah, he's a game wrecker. He's the top rated player in the game per PFF. So gotta stop. But we saw Aaron Donald wreck him in the Super Bowl last year.
Yep.
So
and again,
it can happen in the middle.
Yeah, Joe didn't like those. It's kind of like the Brady effect. The comparisons. Brady just didn't like the people right up the middle. That's what he hates the most, and most quarterbacks do. They're no different. But obviously that's a key to the game. Now, when we've flipped to the special team side of things, obviously let's look at our kicking game. More importantly, our field goal kickers. We got Money Mac. The big reason we made it to the Super Bowl last year, I'd say the main reason was Money Mac and his clutch 50-yard field goals at the end of every game. It was just a steady diet of those. I don't think we had the same Money Mac this year.
He made 2 last week, and then he kicked 3 extra points.
But let me ask you this. Was you nervous even on the extra points?
Yes.
I was too. Before it was always a foregone conclusion.
Right.
There's something.
It's just a different unit. Different long snapper, different holder, and
I think we were all holding our collective breath every extra point anymore, and I don't like that.
No,
I don't like that, and
hopefully we won't need to come down to field goals this tomorrow, and we don't have to worry about it. But it does make me nervous. Yeah, and then we got Harrison Butker on the other side. He seems like an okay kicker. Nothing special. He's not Justin Tucker.
No, nothing. And
he came up pretty short in that last game on that, 53-yard try.
Well, and if you remember right, the regular season, he missed that 50-something to tie it.
Yeah, that's what I was talking about.
Okay. Oh, okay. Yeah. So he missed that. So I right now I think the kicking game as last year it was a definite decided advantage. I think it's probably considered a wash.
It was a historic run what McPherson did last year. So to expect that again, no. But we are nervous.
Yep.
It just doesn't look right.
Now, what about our Lawrenceburg native Drew Chrisman? How are we feeling about his performance right now?
I think pretty well. I mean, last week was,
He had that one shaky punt
Yeah.
where we kicked it. It was like almost at the midfield or something,
Yeah.
and he kicked it and it only made it to like the 25 or something.
Yeah.
I was like, ooh, we'd have liked to have got that, pin that in there
Yeah,
a
I mean,
little bit more.
it's his...
But it's Buffalo.
Right.
Those conditions
Snowy,
are terrible.
I think he was just worried about getting it off. I mean, that's what you worry about in those situations. When you have a defense like the Bengals, just get it off, get it somewhere down there, not too, technical, because then you're going to drop the punt or get it blocked or whatever. Just get it off.
Yeah, I think he's been doing, obviously a solid job. A lot better.
I know what I'm talking
about.
Yeah,
but he's been a lot better than
Yeah.
Huber. I gotta,
sure.
obviously give him that, and a lot better hang time too than Huber. Huber is throwing those freaking straightforward kicks, no hang time, and there's a recipe for disaster, especially come playoff football. Now, one other thing is obviously the coaching. How do we feel? I mean, I would say Andy Reid is probably, on the short list of the top, coach out of 2 or 3 people. How do we feel about Zach doing these days? I've been a very big critic of Zach and his play calling, but when they're moving like this, man,
credit where credit's due.
Yeah.
I mean, he had a hell of a game plan last week. What he was calling was coming up aces. So hey, keep it rolling.
Yeah, and
I
will tell you this:
he's beat Andy Reid 3 times in a row.
Correct. Yeah, I don't know if that has more to do with Louis A. or Zach, but hey, he's the head coach.
Burrow's had phenomenal numbers against the Chiefs.
I will say this: Zach has got the Bengals culture turned around. He has got the community like foaming at the mouth for these Bengals, and that's half the battle.
Yeah.
When you got the support and then you've got your team buying in as a team instead of eyes, there's all we's. I mean, that's the big
taking those game balls to the local.
That's money right there. That's next level stuff right there. And you know what? He understands it, and you can see the Bengals fan base growing, because I know he sends some game balls to Tennessee, some bars down there. I mean, he understands. Let's get the more support and the more that the Bengals are loved. Now, I did see an article. I think you maybe sent that where maybe the Bengals are the new villains of the NFL.
Yeah.
I like that.
They've been chirping a lot.
I love it.
Burrowhead.
I love it.
And just they've been chirping all week. So
yeah, I like it. Though. I wonder. Hey, anytime you compare our team to the Patriots dynasty, wow.
Well,
that gives me cold chills.
I saw online somebody was talking about, this is our time. We have to embrace it. And he sent out it was a video montage of like when Burrow was going to get drafted. People were talking about he needs to just pull an Eli Manning, get out of that situation. It's awful, and just look where they're at now. It's just
he's the exact opposite of a Carson Palmer.
Yes.
Yeah. He's seen a challenge. He took it head on, whereas Carson Palmer took his ass and hightailed it out.
Yeah.
See, that's that shows me something, and I think that just goes to Joe's likability. He isn't afraid to try to take the easy way out. Bengals were notoriously one of probably the bottom 5 franchises, probably in the NFL. And Joe, but now they got me.
This team has taken on his identity, really.
Absolutely, and I love it. So,
did we talk about the mayor?
I don't think we have talked about the mayor. What do you think about his comments?
You used the term last week, jabroni.
Yeah.
I think he's a jabroni.
He is a jabroni. He does, quite frankly, I think it's more about, he's such a jabroni, I don't even think it's more about the Bengals. I think he wants to get his name out there.
For sure.
Yeah. And what? Whatever happened to...
He might not get reelected.
Well, exactly. And whatever happened to, like, the things of mayors like, I'll give you, I bet, a case of Skyline chili.
Yeah.
If you're playing someone in Maryland, like a case of crab cakes or something.
He was up there talking about paternity tests with them. I bet Burrow cringed.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, it's like, this is the mayor of the city.
Yeah, he's a jackwad.
And this guy doubled down. He said on his social media, he's like, I hear you, Bengal Nation. You know, I embraced the moment, blah, blah, but he still's not taking it down.
No.
It's still out there.
No.
So.
Yeah, but I will say this. Come game day when the whistle blows, that doesn't
none of
matter.
that matters.
None of it matters.
For sure.
They say bulletin board. I mean, just none of that stuff matters. You're not going to play any harder to get to the Super Bowl. You're one game away from the Super Bowl. None of that stuff matters. So,
speaking of that, are we going to the Super Bowl?
I think, and now there is
not the R&R, but the Bengals.
Well, I'm just saying. Let's talk about the R&R. There is whispers that we did such a bang up job for the Trojan State title game that maybe we get credentials for the Super Bowl. I don't know.
Keep cheap. Is he going to get us media credentials?
Well,
for the Super Bowl?
if he wants to tag along, he's going to have to do the legwork.
Yeah.
But that being said, talking about the Super Bowl. Talk about, obviously we're at the AFC Championship game. Yeah. So I thought it would be a good opportune time to obviously one of the best, biggest, most famous games in Bengal history is the Freezer Bowl where they knocked out the San Diego Chargers.
That's a good looking shirt.
Yeah, I love this shirt. But I will say this, I don't think the weather is going to be freezer-ish.
It's going to be cold.
How cold?
20s.
Okay, that's cold.
That's cold.
Hey, and with a high ankle sprain tight.
Oh,
ooh, not loose. Not going to be loose. Oh, man.
Oh, are we ready for predictions?
I think we are, William.
Man.
I didn't know it was going to be in the 20s. I like that.
20s. It's going to be frigid.
Okay.
Yeah. I mean, I was reading about the weather. It said it's going to be cold. Wind is going to be picked. But they said it's going to be, the game will not be really affected by it.
Okay.
Outside of Mahomes' ankle.
Mahomes' ankle. And that's the big key. So how do you see this game playing out? What's your score, bud?
I think that the Bengals will just tack on to what they did last week. Their offense is rolling. I see them winning 31-23.
31-23. That's just about where I kind of have it earmarked. I got the Bengals winning 30-24. Chiefs have the ball. If they score a touchdown with the extra point, they could win it. But Louis A, once again, comes up aces.
I don't know if I like that because my heart, I don't know if it can take Mahomes.
Buddy, we did that all year last year. Last play of the game. But Louis A, I just think that the Mahomes, that ankle isn't going to hold up. I think Louis A is going to put the pressure on him. I think they're going to bracket Kelsey. They're going to make him move off his first read. I think it's going to be a little bit of a quote-unquote shit show for the Chiefs on a couple drives because it's just not going to be fluid.
Yeah.
And I think the Bengals, they're going to hold up.
They know what they want to do.
I think and they have a clear, concise idea what they want to do. Now, if they're going to gash them for 7-8 yards a pop, man, we might boat race the Chiefs. That's how ugly this thing could get. Now, that being said, it's going to be a big deal whether we can contain Chris Jones. So P. Ryan, I think, will be big in this. But I think Jamar goes off. I just don't think that the secondary has any answers. I beg Spagola to dial up some blitzes because Joey B will have a field day.
I like it. I saw a stat that I think when there's a rematch of conference championship games, when teams played in the regular season whoever won that first game, they're 8-2.
Okay.
In the championship. So numbers are telling us that the Bengals should win historically.
Now, historically, I saw when you beat a team 3 straight times, they win the 4th. Let's go, Bengals.
That...
See you guys after the game.